Hello and welcome to Builders. I'm your host Lee Haynes, and today we're talking about global engineering leadership, alignment at scale, and what it takes to modernize systems used by millions of customers around the world. My guest is Jip Koudjis, Head of Engineering Loyalty at IKEA. Jip leads global teams focused on loyalty technology, including a major transformation, taking 11 separate local loyalty programs and consolidating them into one unified global system. His work sits right at the intersection of engineering, product, data, and organizational change, where alignment and execution actually make or break the outcome. We'll explore what it takes to move a global organization forward, how you build engagement in distributed teams, and how loyalty tech becomes a real strategic lever at IKEA's scale. Jip, we have a really interesting discussion ahead of us, so let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Leon. Looking forward to it.
Let's start with your career path. How did you grow into engineering leadership and eventually into this global role at IKEA? What came before?
I think I've been doing a lot of things in the past, but for almost 10 years ago, I landed at IKEA, and with IKEA being such a large enterprise, which really nurtures their employees, I've been able to develop myself and grow. I started within operations and support, and throughout the years I've been moving around. I've been spending a lot of time within payments, growing, starting to manage or lead teams. And for the past 1.5 years, we really like the loyalty program. IKEA Family has been around for a long time, but we felt that it's time to put even more pressure on it and make it more important and make sure that it really leads us through our journey. So we created our own subdomain. So we lifted it to its own domain on loyalty. And I came on board to really get the teams that were already existing in different areas of organization under the same roof. And I'll look at the same North Star and then fight for the same goal, maybe.
Fantastic, and we'll talk much more about the loyalty program and everything shortly. But what early lessons or mentors or even failures shaped how you lead large teams today?
I think I've had some very, very good managers and leaders in the past, which I've been able to look up to, and also I've been able to give the opportunity to fail. I think that's one of the strengths that we're having. You're allowed to fail. You're encouraged to fail as long as you learn from it. So from that perspective as well, at the moment I'm having 4 teams under me. Of course, I did not always have those 4 teams under me. When I was an engineering manager, I was able to really look into the best practices and create a vision for myself of how I believe you can make a team a high-performing team. And that has been working out. And me growing into the role of head of engineering or product engineering manager, we call it within the IKEA realm. I've been able to cascade that vision to a larger audience and have a larger impact on our organization, on the people, on how we deliver our software.
And I mean, engineering leadership in a global giant like IKEA is a different game entirely, right? What does good engineering leadership mean to you in a complex organization like IKEA?
I think that might not just be for IKEA, but I would say that the big benefit or the main thing of proper leadership is that you enable teams. I'm working for my teams rather than my teams are working for me. I'm trying to enable and create a work environment where people can flourish and people can excel. And I think if you manage to at least try to achieve that, people will feel engaged, people will feel nourishing, people will bring the best out of it.
And now let's talk about moving organizations forward and creating this alignment across teams. You mentioned that 4 teams are working under you, and you've also talked about moving organizations forward. What does that look like in practice when you're operating across dozens of countries and with several teams, like we said?
I think with our setup, like we are, of course, we are since yesterday we launched New Zealand. So we're now live in 31 markets with our part of IKEA, or Inca world. We work with a lot of matrix organizations. So we do not have day-to-day contact with all the markets, but we have a global retail counterpart, which we collaborate a lot with, where we set the course. And even within our digital domain, we work in a full FedEx setup. So where I'm looking a lot into in my teams and in the how, I have a product counterpart where we look into what are we trying to resolve. And of course, we have even our UX and data leaders in our FedEx constellation. And all together, we set the course. And I think that is needed when you work on a scale like we are doing. You have this close alignment. Yeah, you can't be everywhere at the same time.
No, exactly. And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned these kind of counterparts and everything as well, because it can't be easy. But can you talk a bit more about how you ensure teams across time zones, geographies and everything, are actually pulling towards the same goal? They're not just delivering output in parallel.
I think that is definitely I think if you look at Inca as a whole, or our IT offices, we have thousands of engineers working with us. And within our loyalty scope, we always try to not exceed 2 hubs. So our teams are working here in Sweden or in our Amsterdam hub. And then, of course, neighboring domains might have 2 other locations. We have 6 IT hubs spread around the globe, but we try to not spread too many time zones and let teams be. Even if we're not located all in the same office, at least have them located in the same time zone, or maybe 2 time zones rather than 3 or 4 in a dome. So from our perspective, we deliver the software that's globally being used. And I think to make that happen, we deliver the framework. We make sure that the specialists in the countries have the tool sets to launch a loyalty program that is relevant for them, rather than that we dictate everything from our ivory IT towers.
Yeah. It makes sense.
And I think that's how you make it work. And that's why you can have the contacts in Korea, because we deliver the framework to them and they do the last mile, or they do the country configuration. There's also within 31 markets, there's so many cultural differences. What is working in Korea might not work in Spain. So there's always the last layer of let's say, the national flavor on top of the global program that we're having.
So you have that kind of foundational layer, right? But local teams, local markets are able to kind of add to that themselves. Yeah, makes sense. Are there any kind of recurring challenges or recurring barriers you see when trying to align engineering, product, commercial, and regional stakeholders? And how do you overcome them without slowing everything down?
I think that's definitely. I think the need of coordination is always there, but there's also a risk, especially in times when challenges arise, or if a team is ending up with a lot of technical debt. It's the alignment that leaders of the teams are doing to make sure that try to get the software out at the right time at the right moment. So I think that is a planning exercise, alignment exercise, but also something that I think we're all so used to working on this scale that it becomes. There's always an issue. It doesn't become a huge issue because everybody has been around at IKEA. I think when you look around at IKEA, at the IT offices, you have a lot of people sticking around for a long time. We do not have the normal, let's say, IT turnover, where people tend to leave after 2-3 years and find new opportunities. I see often that either people leave relatively fast, or you stick around forever. We have to. Those are the two main
What's the
things.
main reason for that, do you think?
I think this is my personal opinion, is how we treat our coworkers. We put a lot of importance on work-life balance, but also if you're up for it, there's no limitation. That's how I started today as well. Like for 10 years ago, I came in as a support analyst, and nobody did anything for me. But by myself taking the extra mile and getting the opportunity, I've been able to grow in the organization. been able to work in multiple domains. I've been able to get knowledge and experiences from different challenges. Now I'm more in loyalty. Before it was payments. Before that, I've been spending some time in more fulfillment related areas. So you see a lot of different parts of the business.
Yeah.
And I think IKEA really helps you grow if you want to.
Yeah. And in these global transformations, I think I can imagine like the hard part is often not the tech, right? It's like a shared understanding. Even great teams drift if they don't share a clear why or like what good looks like or kind of who owns which decisions, right? What I'm saying is that like engagement can make or break transformation. How do you build genuine engagement across a global team, especially when different markets might feel different levels of urgency, etc.?
I think that's where our global retail counterparts are doing great work, and really coordinating with the markets, listening to their needs, make sure that their needs are being fed into backlogs or shared with other markets. Because if you have 31 markets, of course, the problems are different, but often also alike. And that means that they create the forums where countries can share with each other and learn and grow their best practices more on an operational perspective. Then, of course, my product counterpart is working very close to their retail partners, where I may be more in my day-to-day work, focusing on the architecture and the technical best practices and the engineering best practices.
Yeah,
and that's how we divide the scope. And of course, our aim, and I think in a proper products constellation, you should, and this happens on a POEM, but also on other levels. I would say that you should be so aligned that on any question, if you ask it to me or to one of my partners, you should be able to get a 70% like answer. I mean, not 100% because we all have our different expertises and where we spend most of our daily work. But our noses are all in the same direction. We should be able to give you an answer that sounds familiar, independent of who you're asking.
Yeah, exactly. I always think it would be interesting to, test that at different organizations to kind of say, okay, ask this person here, ask that person there, and see, okay, how similar are the answers? Are they all kind of moving? Do they still, share that kind of, or understand that strategic goal, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And you've mentioned like your product counterpart a couple of times. I want to talk about loyalty, not just as a program, but also as like a product lever. Because loyalty is often seen as this kind of marketing play, right? It's like marketing infrastructure. But in reality, it's a product with its own, user experience, incentives, and data flywheel, essentially. So how do you think about loyalty as a product at IKEA?
I think we're maturing, and we're maturing at a fast pace. If you look at the industry and the world around us, loyalty is no longer something that it's a commodity. I think you're based in Sweden as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah. From a grocery store to the pharmacy, everybody is having their own loyalty, being it more successful and more complex or more simplified. And I think that's what customers expect nowadays. Of course, we have had our loyalty program for a long time, and for a long time it has been to give, of course, the family pricing, and that has always been there. And then you were getting your free coffee, of course, if you went to an IKEA store in the past.
Yep.
I think for the last years we have been on a journey to really catch up, and we want to become a leading loyalty program. We are having so many members, and we really want to. If you want to become a member and between all the options of loyalty programs you choose to become a member of IKEA, you want to make sure that you get something in return for that. And get that engagement with the customers, members.
And
it's big.
And you mentioned the fact that about becoming a member of the loyalty program at IKEA. I think it's IKEA Family is how it's known, right? This has grown into one of the world's biggest loyalty communities with over 110 million members globally, huge amounts. At that kind of scale, what does loyalty enable beyond discounts? What strategic doors does it open? Because at that scale, loyalty programs can become a personalization and a growth engine for a company, right?
Yeah, and I think those are territories that we really are embarking on at the moment, to give you that next level personalization and to really work with the data that you're giving us, um, and make that happen and make sure that you have those, and that you feel that it's worth it. You share your data with us, and I think nowadays people are more and more aware that even if you Google, like nothing is for free.
No.
The only thing for free in life is the sunset and the sunrise, right?
Mm.
You pay with your data, and we want to give you a personalized and helpful experience in your journey, because we do have a lot of complex customer journeys. If you are buying a kitchen, or if you're remodeling a whole living room, it might be planning. You might want inspiration. You might want to do some drawings in the different couches or closets, and all this combined can end up in a pretty complex journey for a customer. And with our membership loyalty program, membership loyalty space, we're trying to gather all of that. Make sure that you have a one-stop shop. I know I've made my drawing for my kitchen, but I'm also looking at my bedroom. And in my membership space, I have like a little bit of a page where everything comes together. I can find my different drawings. I can find my appointments. I can find my receipts from the past. And what we're rolling out now globally is the rewards program. So I can also find how many rewards have I been collecting, which kind of rewards can I redeem. And this is what we mentioned in the beginning. It's the global program that we're rolling out at the moment.
Fantastic. And you mentioned kind of paying with your data there. It's a really, really good point, because like across retail, these loyalty programs are kind of shifting from points and perks to these personalized ecosystems you were just mentioning. And it's doing that using data and AI to kind of tailor experiences and the rewards, right? So is personalization one of the key value drivers of going global? And if so, like, how do you do it without feeling creepy or intrusive?
I think besides our domain, I think this is what happens, of course, when you're working on a skill like we do. We have a separate product area that's working with personalization. So how we are doing is that we are feeding data so they can run the personalization set. And it's not per definition that we are looking at, we know that you have 3 children of the age of X, Y, Z, and then you get this. Is more of a way of, we know that you have been buying a bed or have been looking at a bed or browsing. Maybe you want to make sure that you see cushions or those kind of things. Or if you're looking at a bathroom, maybe look at these towels as well. So we're not going into the hyper personalization at this point.
Right. And that makes sense. But if you have this kind of global core of a loyalty platform, how do you balance that with local market needs? There are different customer behaviors across markets, regulations, of course, and these essentially these commercial realities. So how do you balance the two?
And I think this is where retail really comes into play. And then, of course, we move a bit further away from tech, because with our loyalty program, we are giving them a tool set. And then the market is combining the loyalty tool set with their marketing tool set. So which kind of commercials are they driving? Which kind of engagement types are relevant in that country? If you look at 2 extremes, for example, and this is why we have a global program, we have a vision of a global program, excluding China. And why do we exclude China? That is not because we value them less. No, China is so mature in their world around, for example, WeChat. And their needs are so different than many other countries that to be able to cater to those cultural differences, we have a local program for China. So to make sure that the Chinese people are getting a program that is perfectly fit for them, for their need and their culture, and integrated in those super apps, where we do not have any super apps yet at this point.
No, exactly. I wonder when one will come, if so.
I mean, it's working brilliantly. So I mean, I'm not.
Yeah. But to talk a bit about kind of engineering efficiency and optimization and scaling team performance now. Obviously, IKEA operates at a, let's face it, at a scale most companies never face, right? So how do you think about efficiency and optimization in engineering processes when the platform is global, it's always on?
I think there we are working within the company. We are working with a DevOps vision. So you build it, you own it, and you run
Yeah.
it. And there, every team is holding themselves according to certain boundaries, certain sets, and certain best practices. We don't want to detail steer because every team is having, of course, unique needs and unique customer problems to resolve. But there is a set of regulations that we have at Inca to really make sure that you build it, you run it, and you use these secure practices. Because
Right.
also with these with the amount of usage that we have, data privacy and security is a huge part of us.
Mm, mm,
At the moment, we are one of the most trusted brands in the world, and we are very proud of that.
mm.
In the same time, we all know that trust is very hard to build and very easy to break.
Yeah, I was
So
going to say it
within
can
all
be
our
eroded
within
very quickly, right?
yes,
Yeah.
so within all our practices, we are having a lot of security handles and levers in place to make sure that the teams push out um, functionalities and capabilities that are they're up to a certain standard.
Yeah. And do you lean on any frameworks or principles as like guides when you're building systems? These are systems that must serve millions of loyalty members reliably across different markets, as we've mentioned. For example, like do you lean on domain-driven design or
We
microservices
lean
or
on
anything like that?
we lean on a lot is microservice, a lot of domain-driven design. If you go more into practices, we call them the engineering baseline and
Mm,
DCIF. So really development tool sets and development practices to make sure that you can deploy and you can run your software, that you have a good RTO. You really have all these levers in place and these cornerstones in place to make sure that it's always on, and when it's not on, we are back on track as soon as possible.
yeah. And when operating at this scale, how do you balance speed of delivery with the long-term architectural health? Is this where the kind of microservice approach comes into play, or what else kind of helps you balance that?
Um, the microservices of course help around that, but we're having our architectural counterparts, and they look at the interconnecting systems. So we have our different teams and different products, and with help of our architects, we are looking at how can we, if we need data or if our functionality goes to a different product area, how can we connect in the best way? How do we want our ecosystem to be, and do we want our ecosystem to be sustainable and scalable for the future? And then within your product area or within the teams, there's a lot of freedom um, to develop the software according to the baseline and to the guidelines that we mentioned before. But that's really a core principle to give the teams as much freedom as possible, but
Mm,
in the same time, hold each other to a wider architectural framework
yeah.
to make it scalable across our many teams.
Yeah, it makes good sense. And you mentioned the word freedom there. I wanted to know, like, what role does experimentation play in increasing efficiency, like both in the product itself, but also in how teams work?
I think experimentation is a key concept of course, how we work. We work with A/B testing and getting things out. It's depending a little bit on where you are in the landscape,
Mm,
on which type of experimentation you're working with. Of course, if you are working in a front-end team and customer-facing team, it's easier, especially in digital tools, to work with A/B testing and give a certain um, amount of the traffic solution A and solution B. But if you're more in a backend or data heavy team, you might want to be a bit more robust in your testing.
yeah, yeah.
So there are different principles that we adhere to, and we have such capable leaders and teams throughout the organization that they usually over time pick what's best for them.
Yeah.
We do. It's not that you have to use solution A or tech stack A. There's guidelines, there's rules and regulations, even for our global teams or development teams, and within those guidelines, there's freedom. And since we run the you build it, you run it, there's also the feeling of ownership, because if your solution is not working in Korea, then you'll be the one that's going to be called at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Exactly. Clear responsibility or accountability. And yeah. A dreaded phone call, right? No one wants.
Exactly.
And I believe a lot of retail, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot are kind of adopting more flexible loyalty mechanics, right? So like tiering, dynamic rewards, marketplace partnerships and whatnot, all to kind of stay relevant under economic pressure. Does that shift increase the demand on engineering teams to like build more modular loyalty platforms?
I think overall we should work in a more modular way, but in how we are set up, we are having, of course, our different entities and also the brand entity. So we're looking at what do we want to have at IKEA. It's not that if everybody is going for tiring that we have to go to tiring as well. You need to look at what is fit for this type of purchase. If you go to a high frequency grocery store, for example, you might want to play with different set of capabilities and different thresholds for your consumers to stay relevant. Our average customer at this point is you don't go to IKEA every week unless you're living next to a store. That's not so likely.
No.
So we need to. Our aim is we want to be relevant.
Yeah.
And that's why we pick, for this point, we are picking our points, and we are now looking at what do we want to have next. And since we are now almost, by the end of this financial year, we are aiming to complete the global rollout of the rewards points, and every income market is having the same program that will also make it easier to add and to remove capabilities because we're all on the same. And from a customer perspective, it's going to be recognized. If you migrate from Germany to the Netherlands or from Germany to Korea, and you go to IKEA to buy your new bed, etc., you'll recognize the loyalty system. It's going to be slightly different, of course, but there's going to be a huge chance of recognition.
Yeah, makes good sense. You mentioned not everyone goes to IKEA every weekend because they don't live close to the store, but sometimes I wish I could go every weekend because they're fantastic entertainment for a little one as well, right?
True, that's definitely true.
Yeah, really nice. But talking about this kind of global loyalty platform transformation, your team is, correct me if I'm wrong, consolidating 11 local loyalty programs into one global solution, right? What's the story been behind that transformation, and what made you decide to do that?
I think, and that is the benefit of scale. It's not that we had 11 different programs, but we had 11 countries that are having a more mature program. I think every country had the family loyalty card, and every country was working with it in a slightly different way. But to be able to give our members a more elevated experience, and also to have a better insights on for example, data, because we want to be more data driven. It helps if you have a global program, because that will also means that you get the data standardized. So from a consumer perspective, we are now able to get functionalities out in a more standardized and faster way, because you do development for 31 markets and not development for different ones. And at the same time, we get data in a standardized way from 31 markets and not just from one or two. So it's a two-edged sword with both sides of benefits.
Yeah, really nice. What have been the biggest technical challenges in moving towards this global loyalty system?
I think we during the past year we have been really scaling up the rollout. So we have been for about 16, 17 months ago, I can be wrong with a month, but we were catering to 40, 50% of our membership base.
Okay.
At this point in time, we are catering for 87, 88% of our membership base. So we have been doing the largest market first.
Yeah.
That also means that our technical solutions have been are being hit with so much additional traffic, which we are built for, but it's exponential amount of traffic. I think at this point, for the past 5 months, we have been hitting traffic records every other week.
Wow.
With the last record, of course, during Black Friday last week, after we launched on the market. We are not doing that much at IKEA with Black Friday, but still that in markets like the US, it's so big. It really pushes through yet another threshold of data. And that means that our technical solutions really need to be able to keep up and auto scale when those traffic peaks hit us, and of course downscale from a cost efficiency perspective and reach calmer periods during the day.
And like with technical challenges, I can only imagine there have been the organizational or cultural challenges, right? So what have been the biggest ones in those areas?
I think for when speaking for my teams, I have the benefit of not being an engineer. And why I say that is a benefit is that I can't micromanage. I was already in my previous role as an engineering manager, where I had engineers under me and not leaders. I couldn't details. I couldn't go into the repo and say, "Hey, this is not going well." I'm technical. I can read. I understand it. Of course, I'm having, but they're like I have better engineers under me than I have, luckily. But that meant that I had to double down on processes. So I created such robust processes around my team that I didn't have to micromanage, and that's why I personally believe in a lot of team building, a lot of in Sweden they say high ceiling. That you can that people in the team, everybody in the team should be able to speak up their mind to each other, but also to me. If you believe I'm wrong, then I'm putting so much effort on trying to create that work environment where everybody can thrive and feels that ownership.
Yeah.
That you, in my vision, that makes that everybody takes the extra step.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that also means that it's scalable. Because if everybody takes the extra step, we move way faster forward.
Yeah, it's a really good way of thinking about it. I must say, but in your view, what's harder, like migrating tech or migrating mindsets and incentives within teams or
it always starts with the mindset.
Yeah.
I think, and that's something a little bit like the comment I made over trust. I think the mindset is also maybe combined with trust. If you create trust, if you can create engagement around the way that we're going, people get that energy and people start working, and then the tech will follow. But if you end up in a situation where trust crumbles, you need to work very hard on getting your team back onto the ladder.
Yeah. And in transformations like these that you've been undergoing, this is like one global system, just to clarify, that doesn't mean one size fits all, right? The trick is often like a stable global backbone, as you've kind of touched upon, with these clear extension points, right? And for like markets, which allows for customization where needed. Is that right?
But I think that is a combination of solutions. I think, and that is where we, from a digital, we build with our solutions and we enable the markets. And then it's the like we have entrepreneurs in the markets. It's not that we dictate. The people in the markets are so amazing, and they know exactly what is needed and what is relevant for their market. We just need to give them the right set of tools to accelerate. And that is, I think that's the key. That's the key to success. give the right set of tools to the right people, and then the organization will flourish. So it's not just giving them the reward loyalty points. It's also our partners from marketing. They give their tool sets to the countries, and from personalization, they give the recommendations to the market what might work, and then they tailor that to something that is fit for a subset or for their whole market set before sending it out. And that's where we all together create value.
And if you look back on and reflect on the transformation so far, what surprised you most, would you say?
I think that you can't do it with tech alone. The markets that have been most successful, I think, for example, Germany is a good example of that. They have been taking the solution, but also have been really weaving it into their commercials and in their advertisement. Where countries that have been going less hard on the advertising of the program, there we still see an uplift. But it's very clear that the launch of a program by itself is not enough. It's a set. It's a tool in the toolbox rather than it's the golden egg.
Yeah. And as I look to wrap up here, I'd like to look forward a little bit. What are you most excited about right now in global engineering, in loyalty tech, or the way customer relationships are evolving?
I think it's the next steps. I think the moment we are having everybody on the same solution also means that the teams do no longer have to maintain the local solutions, and we can have full attention on the future and have full engineering power, energy, and time on how we can enhance the program that we're having launching. And how can we catch up and even maybe be a leader with our program? Because we have the volume, we have the amount of members, we have the appeal of IKEA and the trust that people have in IKEA. So we have all those cornerstones. And with having the global solution available and live to the many, many members that we have, what can we do more with that? And how can we really help that lift IKEA? I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And is there anything that you're building specifically that you're very, very excited about? Maybe a lot you can't talk about, of course, but anything you can talk about?
We have a lot of exciting things coming up. Also, very exciting things that we can't talk about yet. But we are really looking at how can we enhance the program for our members even more. How can we be more a player in your life? We want to be leaders at life at home. So how can we play a bigger part in that and help you make your life easier with our technical and retail solutions?
And do you think hyper personalization is key for that? You mentioned earlier about this, personalization, but not hyper personalization to the extent that that I have, one son, for example, or I do this or I do that. Do you think hyper personalization is a key enabler of, really taking these programs to the next level?
I think that can be the future. And of course, we should not. I've really been trying to do my best to not mention AI, but let me mention AI once then in this podcast. Because most likely every podcast is going on AI.
Yeah.
I think AI will be an enabler there. And it will be super interesting to see how we can leverage and speed up personalization and adding more value with help of AI.
Yeah.
I did my best to not mention it. Of course, we've been very, very light.
For once, we're quite heavy on on the topic in the
exactly. So I did my best.
So it's been refreshing not to be in this one. But one from me on AI. Like, how's IKEA approaching it? Do you have dedicated teams working in the area, different pods within teams, or like how are you approaching it?
What we're doing it's on different levels. We are looking at opportunities to give customer value with AI, with help of AI, and enhance solutions on decision making. So we have a lot of attention on that on global in the global teams. And from a more engineering perspective, we are also looking extremely hard on how can we increase the engineering engineering experience with help of AI. How can we be more productive? not vibe coding, but how can we have AI as a tool set to make our life easier and get things out. So we're implementing AI on a lot of different facets of the organization, both from a coworker perspective, but also looking at how can we enhance the customer.
Super. What's one pitfall you'd warn other companies about as they try to scale global platforms and data products, generally speaking?
I think it's to go too fast, too unhinged. It's really there's a change process around all the different situations, and you can't do it with tech alone. I think if we have the division of retail, or maybe let's call it commerce and digital, I think if every counterpart is going hand in hand, you can be a force. You can move super fast. But if tech is going too fast and commerce is not catching up, or the other way around, that is a pitfall. I think you need to get all the people looking at the same North Star. And then you can move very fast.
Alignment, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
If you could, I think last one from me, if you could bottle one key principle from this transformation that other engineering leads should take note of and remember, what would it be?
It's a repetition, but I would say alignment. But there's also with alignment and because with alignment and the safe work environment, those are my two pet peeves. You can move faster. You do not want to micromanage. If you have recruited the right people in your organization, then you should not have to micromanage it. So I would say with alignment, everybody fighting for the same cause. Not just in your single practice. So it's across practices. So it's if you're an engineering manager, it's with your product data and UX counterpart. If you are a lead on a different set, maybe you have other counterparts. But as long as you with your peers are fighting for the same cause, I think you can move very fast.
Yeah. Really, really well put. Well, before I wrap up here, Jip, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm very happy honored to be here today, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
I know the pleasure is all ours, all mine. So thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today. I think your experience guiding large teams through a transformation like we've been talking about, transformations that touch millions of people, is really, really impressive to hear. So thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to Builders for more conversations with the leaders driving technology forward. Until next time, keep building, and we'll see you soon.